the World Bank was in a process to fund a solar panel, a floating solar panel, and there was an idea or at least a proposal at some stage to take a $300 million World Bank loan and to fund this project. But the government of Pakistan, it has shelved this project. You may be knowing about that, the 300 megawatt floating solar panel. How do you see the government's priorities? There was a cheaper financing available. The loan could have been paid back in maybe 3 to 5 years, and cleaner energy. Pakistan shelved that project and it preferred other thermal based or at least some other projects which it wants to do. So do you still think that there is a clear priority of the government of Pakistan to shift towards cleaner energy?
I think that priority is definitely there. I had a discussion today with the Power Minister about the policies in the energy sector. My understanding is that this project did not go through the analysis of whether it corresponds to the least cost expansion plan. If it does and it meets the requirement, the government can always come back and ask for the financing.
A little bit technicality. The internal rate of return of the project was fantastic, and still it was not up to the IGSEP, the framework under which the project has to be eligible for the financing or for even taking over. So what was actually happening behind the scenes? Don't
ask me, I'm not behind the scenes.
because the World Bank was involved in this process, and suddenly the project was shelved by Pakistan.
We are providing an offer of financing for all of the projects, but if a government wants to step away, whether temporary or on a permanent basis from a project, we're not going to force anything on anybody.
Okay. Coming back to this country partnership framework, of course we spoke about lack of consistency and other issues. Security again is a major challenge. For example, the areas that we have identified, the major problem that we are facing in the rural areas, particularly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan, and these two provinces are facing security challenges. Do you think that this could be a major hurdle in implementing this program?
Well, I think one thing we need to recognize is that Pakistan really is a country of 4 very, very different provinces, and so our approach in each of those needs to be tailored to the circumstances on the ground. And yes, indeed, of course, it's difficult to implement in areas where, for example, we cannot easily travel to, or where contractors that are hired under World Bank financing face security risks. But it is part of the responsibility of our counterparts who are ultimately responsible for the implementation of the projects to deal with these issues, and we can provide the adequate support. So I think we're a development organization. We're used to work in very challenging circumstances. Pakistan's circumstances are challenging, but I'm sure we can offer value even in areas that are challenged as the ones that you mentioned.
Okay, but let's look at it from this positive perspective. Let's assume that all the programs or all the initiatives under this program are by and large implemented. Mm-hmm. How this can impact Pakistan's economy? For example, before this country partnership framework, the foreign direct investment was supposed to be 0.6% of the GDP by 2029. Again, economy of Pakistan to grow 3.8% before this country partnership framework in 2029. Do you think that if this program is implemented in true spirit, this can really change these indicators?
Yes, I think so. And by what I mean implemented in true spirit is not the impact of our investment, but it's the impact of the policy reforms that are necessary to reach the ultimate outcomes. But absolutely, if we see learning outcomes improve significantly, if we see stunting rates decrease significantly, if we see the investment climate improved so that it attracts more FDI, if we see revenue to GDP going up to from single digits to 15% as we're targeting, all of this will create a policy framework, but also will bring in the resources for the kinds of investments that will create much faster economic growth and better living standards for Pakistan.
So in terms of the outcomes, stunting rate, as you have mentioned, and your concluding remarks on these issues, 38% average stunting rate in poor districts, it is 60%. Where do you see Pakistan after 5 years and 10 years? Because you have certain goals in that area.
So we've said that in 10 years we want to reduce it by 30%. In the most affected areas. So it would go below 40% of the most affected areas. We heard today from our colleague in UNICEF that in Punjab, the latest multi-indicator survey suggests that stunting rates in Punjab have declined, I think, 4 or 5 percentage points just in the period between 2017 and today. So I think progress in the order of that we're indicated in the CPF is absolutely possible.
So moving towards overall Pakistan's macroeconomic stability, there is an element of relative stability returning to Pakistan. We have in relative terms, external sector stability, current account is in surplus, our budget deficit still growing but not at a faster pace. Do you think Pakistan has achieved the fiscal consolidation? It has stabilized the economy, and now from this point it can grow, and it can grow faster, or still Pakistan has to pause and it should maintain the pace that it has been maintaining?
Well, the reforms need to be maintained. I mean, part of the problem that we've had in the past is once the initial consolidation was done, the market's sentiment improved, inflation declined. The government decided, okay, now we can, start relaxing a little bit, giving a little bit of benefits.
Is it the time to relax
or
or not?
No, I don't think so.
How long it can go?
Well, I think the targets of the IMF program has only just started. I think Pakistan has every interest to remain compliant with the IMF program. We are working very closely with IMF, for example, in the area of revenue mobilization. But I think the anchor that provides is a strong complement to what we are trying to do in the long-term development area. So I do think this is important and will remain important. And it will generate fruit, because already as a result of the consolidation, the decline in inflation has allowed policy rates to come down. That's reducing the cost of serving the domestic debt. If you stick to this, you can start seeing a lengthening of the maturities on the domestic capital market. That means the gross financing requirement of the government can also gradually be reduced. So you just create the buffers that I was talking about earlier, that in previous crises you didn't have. And then you're much more vulnerable to external shocks. So I do think this is not over. But we're starting to see some light at the end of the tunnel, and that's very welcome.
Okay, the government recently unveiled a 5-year homegrown economic plan. They call it 5E economic framework, and the government claims that this program will lay the foundation for Pakistan to become $1 trillion economy by 2035. First, how do you see this framework, this economic revival program? And second, do you think that Pakistan has the potential to become $1 trillion economy by 2035?
Well, long-term projections are always a little tricky. But if you're thinking grosso modo that Pakistan's GDP in dollar terms should double, a little more than double over the decade, that would require growth in the order of 7 percentage points a year. Is that feasible? Absolutely. Is it currently projected? Probably not. So therefore, we need to look at what are the key reforms that make that possible. We have obviously taken the Uran plan with great interest. In many areas, it is very consistent with the emphasis that we're putting in the partnership framework. It provides, I think, a very good guidepost for our work. And so, again, you were talking about consistency. I think it's not so much the content of the plans. My sense is what Pakistan needs to do is relatively widely known and relatively widely shared and accepted. It's actually getting it done, implementing it. That is the key challenge. So I think for us, we're trying to overcome that challenge through this outcome orientation and this longer term perspective, and we hope that helps the government also with that consistency.
Mr. Martin, last question from my side. President Donald Trump, he has made 2 calls, one to the OPEC and Saudi Arabia to cut the oil prices, and second to European Central Bank and to the Federal Reserve to cut the interest rates. Where do you see the world going?
That's a good question. Our latest global growth projections suggest that the world is going in 2025 to grow roughly at the same rate that it did in 2024. Now, the US economy has been doing very well, and that's been driving a lot of that additional growth momentum. Some other parts of the world are not doing so well, and in particular, the emerging markets and the poorest countries are doing much more poorly than they need to. So, if you look at it from the perspective of developing countries, the world should be doing much better.
Thank you so much, Mr. Martin Reiser. ये वर्ल्ड बैंक के वाइस प्रेसिडेंट थे फॉर साउथ एशिया और अपना जो डिटेल एनालिसिस है और पूरा पर्सपेक्टिव दे रहे थे जो 10 साल का प्रोग्राम लॉन्च किया गया है। अगले 10 सालों में $20 अरब की वो लैंडिंग करेंगे पाकिस्तान को, जो सोशल सेक्टर खास करके एजुकेशन और हेल्थ के शोबे हैं। तो लेट्स सी, इस पर हम नज़र रखेंगे कि किस हद तक हुकूमत पाकिस्तान भी और वर्ल्ड बैंक इस पर अमल दरामद कर पाते हैं। प्रोग्राम द रिव्यू से इतना ही। कामरान, यूसुफ और शहबाज राना को अब इजाज़त दीजिए। अल्लाह हाफिज़।